All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another segment of Meet the Team. Matt Ham here, and today I am sitting with the one and only Mr. John Pinter, the CEO of Red Earth. John, what's up, man?
Hello, I'm glad we're doing this finally.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
It's like I'm wrangling. I'm saying, "Hey, John, let's get in here." So I'm glad to finally get you in, man.
Absolutely, I've got plenty to talk about.
Well, before we got so much going on, but one of the things that I really want to focus on for the team and for anyone who is new being brought on is really understanding kind of the dynamic of the Genesis story, where Red Earth came from, and kind of how it was over the years, how it's grown into what it is today.
Yeah, and I think it's an important story because it's kind of what makes us who we are. It's kind of the DNA of some of the strategies and the people that we've chosen and how we operate. And it like any other story, I think it has its chapters to it, and it shaped me, which has shaped our business. And there was a lot of happenstance and happenings by accident that go into anybody's life, but especially as it relates to my business life, those were the kind of the chapters or the steps that got us here. And I've shared the story so many times with so many people. Whenever we hire somebody new, I think it's important for them to kind of hear that story. Or if we engage with a new client, I think it's important because, like you and I have talked about so many times, it really highlights how we operate and why we focus on certain things. And it's truly what makes us unique and different in the industry.
Well, absolutely. And it shows you the experiences that have brought you to where you are
That's
now.
right.
So it's not just, we got some idea to do this thing. No, we're doing this because of 20 years in the business, seeing it done incorrectly, having done it incorrectly,
Yeah.
and now having a purified, if you will, idea of how we kind of redevelop the new home sales and development industry.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. And I think that like any company that's lasted as long as we have, 20 plus years, going on 25 years, I don't think anything, or I didn't start out coming out of college and saying, this is what I wanted to do.
Right.
It kind of came to us, and the journey and the story and the adventure along the way has come with left turns and right turns and bumps and a lot of good times and a lot of challenging times, but it's what shaped us here. So I think the story deserves its kind of place in our structure.
Sure. So you, I know, having known you, for 15 plus years now, grew up in the D.C. area, came down to UNCW to go to school.
Yep.
And getting out of UNCW, you got your pilot's license, you're into flying.
Yeah.
So take us from there into how you got into real estate.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about coming here to Wilmington, North Carolina, to go to school here, not really knowing much about it, it came because of soccer. I played soccer. So I think two things that are important to me in this business. Number one, the DC environment, and number two, athletics and sports. And the DC environment, I didn't know any different. Number one, I came to Wilmington. I didn't know places like this existed. I mean, Wilmington compared to DC, it's two different worlds. And what we have ended up doing for years and years and years is help kind of tell the story of these people in these feeder markets, we call them, but these big cities, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, New York, Long Island, and they truly can live another chapter of their life in a place like Wilmington or Florida or Lake Tahoe or Pennsylvania. And I think without that perspective of me actually coming from that and moving, although I was very young, it gives me a different perspective on that transition and in that place that we live.
Absolutely. Well, again, that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
Having known what it's like to live in a city and, hop on a bus or hop on a train to go to work every day.
Yeah.
To then offer somebody a master plan community where everything's like, it literally is like another world. It's
Absolutely.
an entirely new world. So that's a huge part of the vision. So when you got in playing sports in college, playing soccer, then what kind of led you into?
So playing soccer, obviously, so many of our successful people have some version of sports in their lives, and I think it's incredibly important because it teaches you very young that sometimes things aren't fair, and there are politics, and there is preparation, and there is natural talent and hard work and all these things. So, especially in the sales game, it really kind of gave me a basis of preparation to what the real world can be like.
Yeah.
It's truly not the, everybody has an equal and fair stake at the table. No, it's you got to earn it.
So, moment of vulnerability and honesty. What type of soccer player were you?
Well, I mean, I was a pretty good one. I mean, back in the day, I think I was a goalkeeper out of the Washington, D.C. area, which was a pretty hotbed, soccer location. And, I moved through all the ranks that there were. Unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't this pro environment. I kind of dabbled with some semi-pro opportunities here and there, but there was no pro league during that time that I came out of.
But you were the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I see you now in that role kind of behind the team, and the team's out there, and you're kind of protecting the goal here. I think that's interesting. So how did you get into flying?
Yeah, so at college, I really didn't know, like many of us, didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I literally probably wanted to just get my grades and get out of school and do something that adults do. I don't know what that was. Nothing really in college grabbed my heart, grabbed my spirit, or focused attention. I was just kind of going through the motions, and I had a roommate at the time, and it was probably my junior year. The roommate's father was an airline pilot, and he happened to be a pretty high up airline pilot for Piedmont Airlines. And he would come and take my roommate and I to dinner and tell us stories of where he was the week before or where he just landed from, and it blew me away. It absolutely the romantic stories of, wait, you were in Brazil yesterday, or you were in London last week, like that blew me away because I just hadn't traveled a lot. I hadn't been exposed to this type of world that you literally had no barriers. And I think that probably it was like I realized for the first time that there were opportunities out there to see the world and to just get out of just what you thought your day-to-day was. And it seemed like he lived a pretty cool life. So that was the first moment professionally for me that clicked, like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Yeah. That's what I want to do when I graduate.
There's something here.
Yeah.
So now I know from the storyline is that you were flying for DHL, right?
Yeah.
You fly for DHL?
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing to go back when that connection happened, that electricity happened of knowing what I wanted to do. It took me over. I mean, anybody that was around me probably would roll their eyes because literally it took me over. My room in my college apartment had posters on the wall of airplanes or cockpits. I got all the magazines. I mean, I would go to the airport and listen. So it like consumed me.
Sure.
It absolutely consumed me. And I knew exactly where my life was going to be. But then I actually started working in the profession, and it slapped me in the face that it was not nearly as romantic as I thought it would be.
Yeah. And so when you started flying these small planes, how did that jump you into the real estate market?
So, I mean, it was like I just got, like I said earlier, slapped in the face, like this is not what I thought it was. And I was really struggling. What have I gotten myself into? Because I've paid all this money for flight training and had posters on my wall and told everybody this was going to do. Well, I was doing it, and it was very unfulfilling, and it was almost kind of scary. And so by chance, I happened to have side flying jobs. I would fly different people, places, charter things, and deliver airplanes. I did scenic flights. I did all kind of things on the side to earn money and build my hours. And so I started to fly for a gentleman who still to this day is one of my mentors, and he still to this day lives here in Wilmington, North Carolina, actually in the same neighborhood I live. But he would ask me to take him to meetings. He was a land developer, worked for a large land developer, and I would fly him to go look at tracts of land, fly him to go to meetings regionally,
Sure.
Close by the East Coast region. And he kind of took me under his wing. I mean, it was one of those things, I didn't probably know it at the time, but maybe he saw something in me, or maybe he was just being kind. But more and more he would, when we got to a meeting or we got somewhere, he would say, you don't have to wait at the airport. Come on, sit in the meetings with us. So I literally I don't really know what they were talking about, but I mean, I can close my eyes and remember little boardrooms or meetings where he was negotiating 1,000 acres here, 1,000 acres there, and it kind of exposed me to the world that I didn't know existed. And also over the time as our relationship grew, he asked me, or offered me, why don't you come in, work for me on the sales side?
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, again, you have chapters in your life, you have forks in your road. I didn't know anything about sales.
Right.
I didn't know anything about real estate. I was a soccer playing pilot. And so the fact that he asked me, and then kind of laid out the outline very briefly of what that meant financially, future, all the rest. I mean, it was just an absolute no-brainer. It didn't capture my energy and electricity like aviation did that first, but it was more of a holistic, this is something that I could sink my teeth into for years and years and years to come. I saw a totality of it, a profession in it.
Yeah. And how many years did you spend what you would say frontline selling before you got into more of the kind of management side of things?
5-6 years of frontline selling, and to get into the sales side and to bring in the soccer playing and bring in the aviation. I say it today. I think that what helped me in those early years of sales is the way that I learned aviation. And in aviation, it's checklists, it's procedural, it's documents. There's very little winging it, if you will. There's very little making it up as you go, because literally you could crash.
Sure.
And conversely, in sales, in all industries, there's a lot of winging it. There's a lot of making it up as you go.
Yeah.
And so here I come in. I don't know anything about selling. I know very little about real estate. But what I did know is I better have some checklist. So probably in the first 6 months to a year, I wore people out asking questions, trying to build a process of where to start and where to stop and where to finish and what do I do next? What do I say if this comes up? Like I literally wanted, and I was surrounded by some really, really good people and some really helpful people. And I think the marriage of that procedural checklist aviation start was a blessing that I didn't even know at the time, that allowed me to have probably quicker steps of success as a salesperson than if I had just gone into it the other way.
I think that's really interesting you bring that up, because having worked for you in the past, whatever that was, 15 years ago when I first got out of college in the industry, and I didn't really understand that side of you. I didn't see you as a thorough, meticulous guy. I saw you more of like in the front, casting the vision, all that kind of stuff. But having known you over the years, though, I see that marriage of the two, where it's a really, really powerful dynamic to bring to the table. Because you're right, so many folks go on just the emotion or the ability to control a crowd, but they don't have anything behind the scenes, or they're so analytical, meticulous that they don't know how to relate to people. So that's a really cool dynamic to bring. So then, through the rise and fall of bubbles in real estate and all this kind of stuff, you learned a lot of really difficult lessons along the way.
Yeah.
And those lessons kind of have led you to where you are now with Red Earth. What would you say are some of the essential lessons you learned during the ups and downs of those years that really got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think that the one lesson I learned that especially in real estate, there are a lot of people that make a lot of money even on the downturn. And so that really slapped me around, because in the first downturn that I experienced, I wasn't one of those people.
Right.
So I was very kind of one directional in my business. Okay, the who we represented, how we represented things. That when things moved, when the market shifted, I was on a one-way street, and I wasn't flexible enough to participate in all sides of it. And I'll never forget, I was on a golf trip with a friend of mine, and it was during a year that I probably shouldn't have been on a golf trip, because financially it was Armageddon. So it was probably 08, 9, 10, something like that. And I'm playing golf, and we're talking about our years. And he says he had one of his best years of his career. And literally it looked like he had, I could have fallen over, because I'm thinking to myself, how could that be? It's chaos out there. Like nothing is happening. But what I realized, and I guess back to your question, what I learned is there's so many veins of our industry that there's a way to participate in all sides of the economics comings and goings. And I think the second lesson that I've learned is that is a surety. In other words, there always is another move of the market. It's not going to be what it is today. And I think that's caused me to operate very, very uniquely and differently today because as we mature, we have a lot more at risk. We can't tolerate reboots. So we have to insulate ourselves with change. For me, insulating myself for change means having veins in all aspects of this business where when people come in, we help them. When people get out, we help them.
Sure.
And being parts of all sides of it. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that was one of the lessons that I've learned over the last 20 plus years is A, be ready because it's a constant. The change is constant. And B, try to have some strategy or revenue model that prepares for all sides of it, whatever that might be.
I think what's interesting in that to me that I see is Red Earth is uniquely positioned in the marketplace to bring a holistic dynamic to new home sales and developer sales and marketing, because like you said, it's not just a one-trick pony. And one of the key things that I've seen and overheard from the team talking about is how segregated or segmented the marketplace can be out there. You know, it's like a developer or builder has this person and this person and this person. They got 15 different folks moving in 15 different directions, and it's stressful and chaotic. So how does Red Earth step into an environment and bring a really unique product, if you will, or product line or service line to someone out there who might be needing those services?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, an appreciation of the very unique environment that the on-site sales world is, the developer world is. That is a very unique, it's just not another listing. And I think that appreciating the uniquenesses and the chaos contained within it is probably the first step. So this is all we've done. For almost 25 years, this is the only space we've been in. As a salesperson, as a sales manager, as a consultant, as a business owner, working with capital groups, they have their needs. Working with developers, they have their needs. Working with builders, they have their needs. Working with on-site team members, they have their needs. Integrating with outside brokerage markets, they have their unique. So, it's trial, it's error, it's reboots, it's systems, it's processes, but it's a lot of experiences that I think probably people they probably don't put into the category because they just don't think about it. So a great example is, we primarily get engaged when there's a problem.
Sure.
Okay. No one calls us and says, hey, things are going great. Why don't you come over here to Texas and help us? That doesn't happen. There's some issue, okay, with a project. And when I say project, our world is what we call master plan communities or new home communities, where there's scale. There's a story to be told over years. That's kind of our world. So, the call comes, and majority of it is there's some underperforming element to it. We're not getting enough margin. We're not profitable enough. We're making sales, but not at the price point or the margins that we want. Or we're just not making enough sales. Or we're not making enough sales quick enough.
Sure.
And so, there's a lot of stresses on developers and capital groups and home builders. And so that machine's got to be fed. And it's a hungry beast to the sales game of these master plan communities. And I think the majority of the pain that we come to replace or to fix or to help is primarily a lack of focus, number one, and a lack of expertise, number two. So lack of focus. A call will come in or a developer will go into a market and they will engage with probably the most successful general brokerage team in the marketplace. That makes sense. It's normal. That happens. But that successful agent or successful team unfortunately serves a lot of masters. That's why they're successful. They have hundreds of listings, and this happens to be one of them.
Absolutely.
And so there's a water down of focus. Okay, that's the first thing. They can't get someone to sit in the model home or become an expert on it because they're serving masters as well. Second part is expertise. So, in addition to the focus, our teams are laser focused on the singular mission at hand. So our team member doesn't go in there and cover multiple sites. And that turns heads at first, because they say, well, how can, this community sold 0 last year, or sold 5 or 10 things last year? How can a team of 3 earn a living? Well, when we get the machine rolling, everybody earns a living, but we do it by being specialists. So, we use the medical analogy, being a general practitioner or being a specialist. I mean, if you're going to get your knee worked on, you're going to a specialist. A family practitioner sends out a referral to a specialist, and the only way in these complex environments that have architectural review requirements, control guidelines, feeder markets, and all these elements, club structures, initiation fees, the only way is focus and expertise, and that's kind of what we bring overnight by installing the right people with the right systems. And so we can impact change relatively quickly.
Sure. Well, and what that is the totality of years of experience, of having done it the wrong way, of having seen every scenario under the sun, because you can look at something and go, I've dealt with this before. I remember this from this community, and that's what gives you, that's wisdom, right? It's experience and knowledge over time, and it brings it to the table. So, John, kind of in sharing this Genesis story and putting some closure to it, what is, the driving force for you that keeps you moving forward? And then B, a second part of that question is, where do you see the industry going, and how do you see Red Earth participating in that? So number one is, what's that driving kind of force for you?
Well, so for me, my mission is to absolutely be the greatest one-stop shop for people in this niche of our industry. In other words, if they have a pain or if they have a need that needs solving, these master home builders or national home builders or master plan communities, the services that we offer in one packaged price, the elements of support, it just can't be beat anywhere in the industry. So what we're committing to do in our growth is hiring the right people in the corporate environment to support our field offices, committing to taking all the knowledge, all the expertise, all the documents into really good franchise elements. So no matter where one of our team members are or what they're representing, the price point, the geographic location, or the product type, they have an arsenal of tools at their disposal for the same cost of a general brokerage relationship at their beck and call. And so, I think we're making great strides. Plus, it helps us be more efficient in helping people. We can do it easier instead of repeating and repetition and doing things over. We now have this system out there. So, and it's been fun. I mean, it's been fun to take all these years and all these experiences and to put it on paper or put it into video or put it onto a podcast, and to be able to help people with really the same issues over and over and again, repackaged, repurposed, and they're ready to be solved. So I think that we're off to a pretty good start with the people we've hired and the plan that we've put in motion.
Yeah. So where do you see this industry going? And where do you see you guys, like what role do you feel like Red Earth is playing in that?
So that's a great question. I think where I see this industry, real estate as a whole going, is even more and more general practitioners. So the industry is going in a place where it's very hard to be an expert. The information is there for finding anything and everything. So as a general broker, you can go online or through any kind of resources and answer questions a buyer may have by digital resources. However, the buyer, the consumer, has the same access to that expertise as you do. So Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, communities' websites, it provides so much information to the buyer, they almost don't need the general broker other than to open the door. Now, being very dramatic, general brokers provide a tremendous service, and there's some phenomenal ones. But what we provide, I think, is a different direction. Laser beam specialists to the mission at hand. and systems to almost, mitigate the risk of even getting us involved, because we know what we can do when we align things like people, budgets, and the feeder markets. We know what we can do in a given scenario.
Yeah. So, John, kind of in closing this interview part up, what would you want to say to someone who is new to the Red Earth team, joining in? What would you want to share with them?
Well, I mean, I think that depending on what role they're coming into, from a salesperson standpoint, I can tell you firsthand that being a salesperson in this part of the industry could change your lives. So financially, it can absolutely change your lives. So, the sky's the limit. There's no ceiling on. There's no limit to the ceiling height of growth and potential. And the cool thing is, it's instead of this sea of limitless general brokers, you're playing in a very small field, and so to be good and to be a professional, you'll get noticed. But financially, you can absolutely change your family's life with this type of scenario and environment.
What about somebody who's coming on to the corporate side to be a part of the culture of Red Earth?
Well, I mean, I think that we've all been part of teams in our lives that were memorable, whether it was in a business environment or other. But for me, some of the best times of my life were being part of great teams. There were times financially where it wasn't even good, but they were memorable to me because the culture and the team I was on was fantastic. They became some of my best friends. My children are friends with their children, and it's a lifelong experience. And so if you can marry being successful and having an incredible corporate culture, that's a great thing. For our office here, I look at everybody that we're hiring while we're growing as future department heads. I mean, truly, everybody is helping us set up the structure of what's going on. And, the idea and the goal is to be able to look back on it a few years with the few key principles that we have involved today and say, look, we all created this. So
yeah, super cool. Well, guys, this is a little bit of a peek into John's past and what has brought Red Earth to where it is now, and certainly hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more.